Actually, it was just that it was loud here this morning. Good. I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll. Secretary. Please turn off cell phones to avoid distractions over the next hour and a half. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, asking Anna Murdoch, who's a junior barista at Mocha Coffee in North Aurora, to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flags of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And would you remain standing for the prayer? I'd like to ask Reverend Mark Tuscan, St. Mark's Church in Geneva, Illinois, to come to the microphone. This is Dr. Tuscan's 25th year as rector at St. Mark's. He's currently serving as president of the Geneva Lions Club also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For 183 years, we've begun these meetings with a pledge and a prayer. Almighty God, we are grateful for the blessings which you have bestowed upon Kane County, for the abundance in the fields as we prepare for the fall harvest, for the waters which run clean and true in the rivers and creeks of this great land. We are also grateful for the resources which we have in Kane County in wondrous, miracle-working hospitals, in libraries that provide wisdom and truth, in churches, synagogues, and mosques that are havens of peace. We pray now, Lord, that our deliberations would honor you and the great gift you have given us in this noble and good land. We pray that we would be wise stewards for our future and for our descendants. And so we give you this moment of deliberation, this time of work, asking you to bless and keep us all in your holy name. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doctor. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the August 13th, 2019 meeting? So moved by Mr. Kenyon, second by Dr. Iqbal. Are there any thoughts, comments, changes? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those nay, ayes have it. We have two speakers this morning. As a matter of protocol, individuals who have registered to speak on agenda items prior to 8:30 this morning are allowed 5 minutes to address the board. Registered speakers for non-agenda items, which both of these are this morning, are allowed 3 minutes with total public comment time limited to 30 minutes. So with that, I'll ask Jeff Klingberg if you would come to the podium.
Mr. Chairman and district representatives, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Jeff Klingberg. I'm president of Mountain Stream Group, a communications consultancy in Hampshire, Illinois. At Mountain Stream Group, we engineer our client success by creating communication programs that connect to customers in new markets. Those programs include advertising similar to what was outlined in the August 12th article appearing in the Daily Herald. In that article, it appeared that the county was considering hiring a video production firm based in Florida to create 2 videos and a television commercial. with a celebrity endorser for a price of around $27,000. This sounded familiar to me, not in a good way. You see, my colleagues and I have seen other businesses and organizations fall for this scheme. These companies are always located in Florida, very often in Boca Raton, West Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale area. The results are heartbreakingly similar. Initial deposits of $20,000 to $30,000 often lead to additional expenditures to cover overages and extras, and nothing ever gets delivered. No commercials ever run. Telephone calls don't ever get returned, and nobody ever gets their money back. As a taxpayer of Kane County and a marketing professional, I felt I had to say something. My request and professional advice to you is to follow a very simple strategy when it comes to deciding how to promote the outstanding economic opportunities in Kane County. You've probably heard this before, but it's called ready, aim, fire. I'm not trying to be cute. It's actually a very sound, practical advice when it comes to marketing and promotion. Who's to say whether or not having 2 videos in a commercial will do the trick for economic development in Kane County? I'm guessing none of us. That's who. Oh, I'm sorry.
So thank you very much. Next up, we have Jeff Ward.
Again, I want to thank you all for another opportunity to address you. I'll try not to steal the sign-in sheet this week. I'm Jeff Ward, 189 Abbey Lane, Geneva. Again, most of you know that I have been pursuing 255 pages of sexual harassment complaints against just one former prosecutor in the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. The Kane County State's Attorney's Office illegally denied the FOIA request. The Attorney General supported my appeal. I won, and yet the State's Attorney's Office continues to refuse to hand the documents over. Therefore, I've taken the Kane County State's Attorney's Office to court, and I'm suing them to get a judge to force them to turn it over. I was here last month, most of you know, and I got to tell you, I mean, considering how this board works, I mean, you guys took on the probation strike with vigor. When the GPS system was going, there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of good thoughts on how to bring that back. But after I spoke last week, the silence was deafening. I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's the topic, I don't know if it's the fact that Joe McMahon isn't running, but I was a little surprised. I mean, I've written at length, you know, we've had a group, it's not just this prosecutor. I mean, this sexual harassment was rampant until Judge Bob Spence finally intervened. We have, they had a group called the Welcoming Committee that would rush to date the newest female prosecutors. And by date, I'm sure you know what I mean. When Bill Engerman, the felony head, was fired by the DeKalb State's Attorney's Office for inappropriately, and not in the wrong places, but inappropriate contact with female staffers, DeKalb Judge Robert Stuckert begged Joe McMahon to hire him, and knowing the problem, he did. And if it wasn't sexual harassment, it was verbal abuse directed at female ASAs. I know of at least 6 stellar female ASAs who quit because the job became impossible for them. I can't name them all. I can certainly mention Lark Cowart. Lark Cowart, juvenile prosecutor, took on some of the cases that would curl your toenails. I mean, I have nightmares about the cases she had to deal with, you know, sex abuse and whatnot, and the verbal abuse got so bad, she quit. And The other thing I don't understand about the board's general silence on this is the gravity of the Kane County State's Attorney's Office ignoring an Attorney General's ruling. And it is a ruling. They call it an opinion, but it is a ruling. Like I said, in a rare moment of lucidity, the state of Illinois set up the public access counselor arm of the Attorney General's office so that journalists wouldn't have to look at a $400 lawsuit every time a public entity refused to answer a FOIA request. Can you imagine? I mean, it's already happening. I mean, it's happening to the Daily Herald. It's happening to me. These entities know it's got no teeth. We'll just refuse it. And you know, the Kane County State's Attorney's Office is, do you have a question, Deb? Okay. So, and the irony of the Kane County State's Attorney's Office, who is sworn to uphold the law, doing exactly the opposite, and the board's kind of been silent. I'm going to keep going. You know, we have a hearing now in DeKalb, the trial actually, on November 6th. I will be taking that on pro se. I will win the lawsuit. I will get those documents. But I keep asking myself, why am I doing your job?
Mr. Ward, thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda, new unfinished business, zoning petitions. I'd like to ask before I go there, I'm sorry, John, two things that I'd like to mention. One is that I'd like to recognize during the Chairman Short program, Mark Armstrong. Mark, if you would stand in the audience today. Mark Armstrong, the board members know your work. The audience, many in the audience know your work. Our constituents appreciate your work. He just earned the designation of the advanced designation in property assessment that's done through testing. And there have only been, if I'm not mistaken, only 30 of these in the history of the state of Illinois. It's rarefied stratosphere of accomplishment and knowledge. You know that I've said many times that the way that I met Mark was coming downstairs on the elevator in the hotel in Springfield, where I was going out to run and a breakfast. He was going over to the Department of Revenue to write legislation. So he's dedicated to the work that we do for our constituents. We're so fortunate to have you. Mark, congratulations. Thank you. Also, later on today, there will be some appointments to different drainage districts. Very important work when you consider what damage overflows do to people's homes when the rains come. One of the people who is going to be appointed is taking the place of Everett Wilden in Sugar Grove. Unfortunately, Mr. Wilden, age 76, Sugar Grove, passed away peacefully in his home on Saturday, August 3rd, 2019, surrounded by love and prayers of his family. He was born on August 27th, 1942, proud parents Everett and Edna Wilden. He grew up on the family farm in Sugar Grove, so a man of the land, and took care of it his whole life. He attended local schools before graduating from Kane High School. In the class of 1960, Everett participated in football, track, and basketball. He was also active in the Future Farmers of America and the Industrial Arts Club. It was while playing the saxophone and band and the Kaneland dance band that he met the love of his life, Kathy Holbert. So he and Kathy walked down the aisle hand in hand, June 29th, 1963 in Geneva. After a short stay in Sugar Grove, they spent their life together on the Wilden family farm. So I would just ask you if you keep their family in your thoughts and prayers and the good work that Everett devoted his life to, we continue. Okay, now, Mr. Martin, I'm sorry. Now we go to zoning petitions. I'd like to ask our chairman of Development Committee to rise, discuss, and take us through the appropriate procedures to approve the zoning petitions on today's agenda. So, Mr. Martin.
Mr. Chairman. The first matter before us today is petition number 4472, filed by Mary Ann Kremple, involving property at 3 North 952 Bittersweet Road in St. Charles Township. I've been advised both by staff and the state's attorney that an amended plan has been filed subsequent to the last time that the relevant committee took a look at this. So rather than moving forward today, our advice is that this should be sent back to committee, and the motion I would like to entertain is a motion to send this back to the development committee for further review. Mr. Weber moves. Dr. Pickleball seconds. We have speakers, I believe. We have none. Okay. Is there any comment or question to this motion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ellen? Aye. Guerrero? Yes. Davis? Yes. Rivas? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. O'Shea? Yes. Bell? Yes. Henning? Yes. Tice? Yes. Cody? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin? Yes. Mina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Jeffro? Yes. Silva? Yes. Surtis? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. The second petition is petition number 4515, filed by Thomas Gould, involving property near 2 South 240 Green Road in Blackberry Township. The indicates that the Kane County Division of Transportation is an objector of that, and I received notification from the staff that the issues between or involving the Kane County Department of Transportation have been resolved, and they are now supportive of the petition. There were some staff recommendations which were supported by the Development Committee, and I now ask for a motion. I move and ask for a second. Mr. Fraz seconds. Any comments or questions? Mr. Fraz?
Yeah, this item's in my district. The trend of the neighborhood is to go to residential, large residential, country-type lots. And this proposal actually exceeds what many of the surrounding lots are in size, so I support it and encourage that you do also. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Ellen? Aye. Guerrero? Yes. Davis? Yes. Rivas? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. O'Shea? Yes. Bell? Yes. Henning? Yes. Tice? Yes. Cody? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Mina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Jeffro? Yes. Silva? Yes. Surtis? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Lee? Yes.
Motion carries. The last petition is petition number 4516, filed by Salvador Tovar, involving property located at 1655 Mitchell Road in Aurora Township. There are no projectors present at the hearing. I do understand and believe that we have people who would like to speak today. The zoning board approval of stipulations, and the development committee had a tie vote resolving in no recommendation from the committee. May we have a motion, please, to approve? Mr. Sanchez, second. Ms. Wernicke. Before we entertain questions from the board, do we have speakers on this? Mr. Thornhill?
Good morning. The petition before you is a request to rezone a portion of a 4.76 acre parcel of land owned by the petitioner Salvador Tovar. The property is located on the north or northeast side of Aurora in an unincorporated area of Aurora Township along the east side of Mitchell Road, approximately 500 feet north of Sullivan Road. The request is for an interim special use on 1.29 acres of the property on the far west side adjoining Mitchell Road. The remaining 3.5 acres would be used for growing nursery stock, which is a permitted use in the farming district. Tovar bought the property earlier this year. It had been improved with a single-family two-story frame residence and a large outbuilding used as a garage and storage building for more than 25 years. It was recently used as the base for a non-conforming small construction company, leaving debris and leftover construction material on the site. Since purchasing the property, the petitioner has been cleaning up the site and will continue to improve the property according to the site development plan that was submitted with the petition that's before you. The plan provides for screening off the landscaping business operations that are proposed by the petitioner from the surrounding properties by decorative wooden fencing placed approximately 10 feet within the boundaries of the special use area, and planting deciduous and coniferous trees between the fencing and the boundaries of the special use area. In addition, the plan provides for employee parking, storage of equipment, and landscaping material and supplies, and also sufficient area to stage balled and burlap plant materials and similar stock used in the landscaping business. This is a service business only. There will be no sales of any goods of any kind on the property. The predominant county zoning classification in the area and of the petitioner's property is F District farming, but with the irregularity of the corporate limits of the city of Aurora, various zoning classifications adjoin the subject property, with manufacturing to the west and R1 residential to the south and east. Land use decisions in this area will be guided by the City of Aurora's comprehensive plan, which designates this area for the continuation of residential development as it exists south and east of the subject premises. The configuration of the requested interim special use is respectful of the city's plan and the probable extension of Donna Avenue. In early contact with the City of Aurora Planning Department indicated the city would not object to this proposed interim use.
I think we're beyond the 5 minutes, if you could.
All right. As development pressure increases in the years to come, expansion will not be impeded by this classification. There were 39 parties notified of the petition. Only one person who lives adjacent to the property attended the hearing. His only comment was about the possible noise from the use of the property, but the stipulation provides a very limited occupation by employees on the site, usually from the beginning of the day at 7 in the morning, possibly till 7 in the evening. Nobody would likely be on the site during the day. For all of the reasons we've mentioned and the depiction on our site development plan, we feel the interim special use as applied to the subject property is an appropriate classification and therefore strongly request your approval of this petition. Interim special use is exactly what this was intended for this type of property. Thank you.
Questions or comments from Ms. Pereira?
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. I originally was completely against this. I have spoken with more neighbors, and they are iffy on it. We're very concerned with the traffic on Mitchell Road, but going forward, I believe the neighbors directly behind that location do not have an issue with it, and those are the neighbors that are going to be mostly affected by it. I still have a concern with the traffic, therefore I would possibly like to change this to a 3-year instead of a 5-year. Is that possible, Mark? Dan Kirkhoff? If we we were to approve this as a 3-year instead of a 5-year interim?
Yeah, you would need to amend the motion in the petition to grant a 3-year interim use. The ordinance allows for interim special uses up to 5 years.
Okay. My concern is, being that the location of this and that it's on a curve, and since he's not going to have any business going in and out all day long, that does look more promising than previously. And so I would like to amend the motion to a 3-year interim special use, and then I would be in favor of it.
Mr. Silva?
Would like to second that.
Well, the original motion was made by Mr. Sanchez.
Would you like to
Are you
take?
willing to amend that to 3 years? And the second was, Barbara Dickey, are you willing to accept that amendment? So that it would be amended. Or let's procedurally help me here. Do we vote on the amendment now? Well, on the motion as amended. We're going to vote on the motion as amended.
Yes, discussion.
Dr. Silva, do you have anything?
Oh, yes. Actually, I think we were thinking along the same track. I've spoken to some of the neighbors. My district abuts this district, and I've spoken to some of the neighbors who do not seem to have a problem with it. That is my understanding. Obviously, I haven't talked to everyone. But my train of thought is, because this is an area that's fairly dangerous, I use it on a regular basis, and it's a curve, and the street sort of forks off, and it's fairly busy area. So I think this is one of those cases where we didn't plan for the growth 100 years ago. So even though there is no, to my knowledge, much objection to this, my concern is traffic. And my concern is that we don't put anyone in a situation where we could endanger their lives or their safety. So I am very much in favor of reducing this, because then we can keep an eye on it, and if it does become a problem, we can rethink it or vote differently next time. But I am very much in favor of a 3-year instead of a 5-year, simply because we need to see how this is going to work. It is already very high traffic. It is already a somewhat dangerous intersection. I don't know the specifics as far as accidents and statistics, but I know that this is an area that we've kept an eye on ever since I've been in public service. So, thank you.
Mr. Copey?
Up in my district, District 9, we just had a petition that we passed in regards to a similar type of business, and there were some questions after interviewing the neighbors in regards to the truck traffic specifically, and what type of equipment would be parked on the properties. And I had met with the owners of the business and suggested that they offer a little bit more buffer and some planting areas and some screenings, and they agreed. And the truck traffic, I suggested strongly that they not incorporate the parking of large trucks and bringing in, specifically semis, and that can turn into a cash rent on the side with some bombers coming in and parking on the property and so on and so forth. So there's a level of faith and trust that we put in little operations like this. And my concern is what type of activity will they actually incorporate in their business? Is there heavy equipment involved? Are there large trucks involved? We don't know. So worst case scenario, a 3-year interim will give us a flavor for that. I do support the economic activity, and I think it's important in that area. And so I'm willing to give them a 3 3-year, providing that it doesn't turn into an absurdity with large equipment, heavy equipment, and trucks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Pereira?
I would just like to add to Mr. Tovar that 3 years is 3 years. We will definitely be watching this. This is our area, and we're very passionate about this area. We do not want to see something go in there that is a disruption to the whole area. So we will be watching it, and I think the 3 years is great, then we can keep progress with it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll? And what we're voting on is the resolution is amended for a 3-year interim special use.
Ellen? Aye. Guerrero? Yes. Davis? Yes. Miles? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. O'Shea? Yes. Stegall? Yes. Mannion? Yes. Tice? Yes. Kobe? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin? Yes. Lena? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shuffle? Yes. Silva? Yes. Burgess? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Lane? Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Okay, before I ask if...
That vote was for the amendment. I believe you have to use that vote for the actual resolution.
Okay, I thought that it was a motion had been amended and they voted on the motion as amended.
I stand corrected.
We're okay. Now to the consent agenda. Before I ask if anybody would like to remove any items from the consent agenda, I'd like to make 2 notes. On Resolution 19309, the contract for security cameras, during executive committee or previous, John Hoshite and Cliff Surgis abstained, and that's just for the record. And then Resolution 19317, expressing official intent regarding certain capital expenditures to be reimbursed from proceeds of an obligation to be issued by the County of Kane, Illinois. That requires a separate roll call vote, and so we'll take that off in the motion to approve the consent agenda with exceptions. So there's one exception so far. Would anyone else like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Mr. Copey?
19315, please.
19315. Okay. Okay. Others? Ms. Thomas?
19323.
19323. Okay. Others? Seeing none, I ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of 19315, 317, and 323. So moved by Mr. Fraz, second by Mr. Davis. All those in favor say aye. Oh, excuse me. Clerk, call the roll. Excuse me, Celeste.
Ellen? Aye. Guerrero? Yes. Davis? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. O'Shea? Yes, with abstention on 309. Stegall? Yes. Mannion? Yes. Tice? Yes. Kobe? Yes. Kobe? Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin? Yes. Lena? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shuffle? Yes. Silva? Yes. Surgeons? Yes, with exception. 309. Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Lane? Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Back to number 19315, may I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially pass that? So moved by Mr. Hoshite, second by Ms. Wodnicki. Mr. Copey.
just curious, is the water contract countywide for all the facilities?
Let's see, this is under, do we have someone who can answer that question from our staff?
I guess it's not that important.
Teresa's coming up. Thank you.
Good morning, Teresa Doberston, Purchasing Director. The contract for bottled water is up October 31st.
And the question was, is it across the entire county?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay, if I may parlay into an idea, Chairman Allen and I had visited the Pingree Grove open house on their new facility, and what they do is they process their own water, and it's an extreme cost savings to the village. So I was wondering if in the future we could consider processing our own water in the same likewise manner, and possibly even save some needed revenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kirby. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Wojnicki.
Just a brief comment, and I appreciate Tom removing that from the consent agenda, but my question was, are they the small 16-ounce bottles as well, or is it just the 5 gallons where you can go to a water cooler and get a glass of water? Sorry, you went and sat down.
This is for the 5-gallon water bottles, and if the departments and elected offices choose to order the 16-ounce bottles in a case of 24, they so have the right to.
Well, I had a brief conversation with Ms. Allen this morning, and as Chair of Energy and Environment, I just think that government needs to grab the ball and run with it as far as being more environmentally conscious about the small 16-ounce bottles. The 5-gallon bottles do get cleaned and recycled and reused, but I think just for the future of our children and grandchildren, that's something we should consider, and maybe bring in water coolers like in the Judicial Center and have cups that compost in a natural landfill instead of, just disregarding and just throwing out your plastic bottles. Not all of them are recycled. A lot of them end up in our oceans and waters, and so it's just a thought, and I do appreciate Tom pulling that from the agenda.
We did remove the styrofoam cups from this request for proposal when we released it, recognizing the environmental impact.
Yeah.
We encouraged the departments and elected offices to order the 5-gallon jugs. However, we offered, because there were bottles that were ordered on the last contract, we just didn't want to totally eliminate it.
Well, Kane County's always on the cutting edge. It'd be nice if we took that step forward and maybe eliminated the small 16-ounce drinking bottles and take it from there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wojnicki. Other comments or questions? If not, we have a motion and a second. Clerk will call the roll. Motion passes. On number 19-317, may I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution expressing official intent regarding certain capital expenditures to be reimbursed from proceeds of an obligation to be issued by County of Kane, Illinois. So moved by Mr. Hoscheit, second by Mr. Sanchez. Any thoughts, comments, questions? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Yes.
Motion passes. Number 19-323, may I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially pass this? So moved by Ms. Allen, second by Mr. Sanchez. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was not at the last county board meeting, so I apologize if my question was addressed at the last meeting, but this resolution includes funding for the documentary film that has been discussed that we would produce and use to promote Kane County, which I generally support. But I'm wondering if we have talked to the municipalities within Kane County, particularly the anchors of this county, Elgin and Aurora, because the majority of our residents live in cities and villages. And so I think that an initiative like this needs to be done in partnership to highlight not just natural resources unique to the county, but also the communities within the county. So that's my first question.
Okay, the answer is, on this specific, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but on all previous programs of this nature, they're not only consulted, but they're included.
So if that's the case, then I think that it's a reasonable question to ask those municipalities, Forest Preserve, for a financial contribution to this project. That said, I'd like to amend this motion, make a motion to amend the resolution by removing the provision for the $27,000. I don't think we should hold up funding for other internal programs that are coming through the Riverboat Grant, but I don't think that this $27,000 for the documentary film should be lumped in with those other projects.
So you're making a motion to
amend the resolution by removing that last section.
To eliminate. Okay, is that understood? So moved by Ms. Thomas, second by who? Mr. Caius. Discussion. Mr. O'Shea.
The committee considered a lot of discussion and input regarding this issue. We left the funding for the project in the riverboat requests. It wasn't a commitment to invest the money. It was just a placeholder for the funds should we choose to go forward. If this project is going to go forward, it would go through the development committee working on a program. We could create partnerships with other municipalities, but it set aside the funds or the appropriation to use it if we chose to do that. That would have to come back through the committee process, through the board, to approve whatever the end result is. I know there was some discussion about having someone do this work voluntarily. That would be great if we could avoid the expenditure, but the committee left this in because we thought that if we were going to go move forward and it was the will of the board as a whole to promote a project, whether it's by ourselves or with our other cities, that we would have the funds available and not have to go back and do a budget adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Other thoughts or comments? Mr. Surtees?
So, John, this isn't specifying who the carrier is, who the production will be. It's just a quote. Correct.
I think Mr. Copey, I think you had your hand up. All right. Other comments or questions, Mr. Caius?
Would this then not be available for other uses while it's bookmarked, or should it be in the open so that we can use it and then reapply it later?
Mr. O'Shea?
Every year we evaluate the revenue that comes in from the Riverboat program, and we allocate monies in each year's budget for that. If we earmark the funds for that purpose, they wouldn't be available, but as a consequence of our long-term budgeting process, they would simply go to the fund balance, back to the fund balance in Riverboat. We have other monies available that we haven't earmarked in that program. The reason being is we want to keep a steady flow of resources available because the Riverboat money is declining. So the consequence of approving the amendment that Ms. Thomas made would be that it would simply go back into the Riverboat Fund for use in future consider, I don't want to say this in a negative sense, but taking the grant funds back and restoring them to the fund balance for use for alternative sources. But this is not being funded to the exclusion of other programs at this point. It's simply additional funding that we approved based on the discussion that we had. And I thought that there were a number of board members that raised concerns about this, particularly relating to who the entity was that we were talking to about doing the work. And I thought the way the committee addressed the issue satisfied those concerns, saying that, again, we're not earmarking this for a specific vendor. We're going to develop the project through the committee, development committee, and then we'll come back to it.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Any other thoughts or comments? Ms. Molina?
John, you just reminded me of something. I know the chairman was supposed to provide us with kind of a background of the RFP process or RFQ process that came up with why 27,000. We haven't seen that yet, so I'm not sure if you have the ability to maybe send that to us later.
No, excuse me, that's not, a review was done. It was done by Mr. Onsick. I believe that it was circulated to the people on either Riverboat or something else, to all.
So then what happens if it goes above the 27,000? Is there more money then that we would earmark from the riverboat, or what would be the plan at that point? And if this money is internal, does that remove it from the external? If I can have the difference between what the external grants are and the internal grant money is, that'd be appreciated too. If you have that now, John, otherwise I can get it from Jill later.
Mr. O'Shea, do you want to respond, or should we just ask?
I guess Mr. Berger's here, but every year we allocate a specific amount to external grants. The funding for the internal grants did not affect the amount we used for external grants this year. We set that money on a multi-year basis going forward to stay fairly consistent, subject to being reduced or modified if the riverboat revenue is reduced. But I can ask Scott if that would satisfy you, Ms. Molina, to send out a reminder to us as to how we've allocated the funds over the last years. And it would be appropriate to look at the 5-year budget that we've got in place so that we can get a sense for not only for this project, but for other projects that you're proposed with as a board member about what funds are available and how we plan on using them.
Good. Thank you. Ms. Thomas, did you have a...
I'd just like to thank Mr. Hoshai for the explanation, and I'll withdraw.
Okay. Ms. Barrero, I think your hand was up. Do you have anything?
Thank you. You discussed that the monies would just go back into the fund for the riverboats for future use, but you didn't actually answer Chris's question, Commissioner Caius' question, because once the money goes into is allocated to the county board, then the county board can use that money, correct? Because up to 30,000, they could. It's up to the county. It's up to the elected official to be able to use money for whatever. So I'm a little confused with this. If the money is allowed for the future video or for our Kane County Connects, et cetera, then doesn't the county board's office still have the authority to spend that money going forward, or does it just remain in a fund for riverboat, for what that's allocated to the riverboat?
I think that the answer to what Mr. O'Shea, I believe that the answer is this is reserved in the riverboat grant area.
Thank you.
By the list that's provided, and we'll send out another. Any other comments or questions? If not, we have an amendment to remove this from the, we have a...
I withdrew.
Oh, you withdraw the amendment, okay. Who seconded it? Mr. Caius. Is that all right with you, Mr. Caius? Okay, let's see. Okay. So what I understand is, Mr. Caius, you're moving to remove, you're moving to to amend the motion to remove it. Is there a second to Mr. Caius's? Ms. Wegman seconds Mr. Caius's motion. Any discussion or question, conversation on Mr. Caius's motion? Ms. Wegman's second. Mr. Shefflow?
So just to clarify what the motion is, I thought that motion didn't go away. The motion to amend didn't go away.
That one went away. This one rose. Okay. Discussion. Mr. Caius.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just seems sort of backwards to me to be taking money out on a project we don't know if we need or we're going to use it for, take it out to then put it back, but then it's going back through committee to decide on whether we're going to do it or not, and how much it's going to cost, or whether it's going to overrun or underrun, or if it's actually going to be for free. So it seems like a redundant process or a nonsensical process to start with to take it out when we don't understand what the actual project is and what it's going to cost. So
thank you, Mr. Caius. Okay, Mr. Hochstein.
If this is a backward process, then our entire governmental budgeting process is backwards. We first appropriate, then we use the funds for the appropriated purpose. So this is exactly how we fund any capital project in the county, and this is how we've done it since the beginning of time.
Thank you. And Mr. Copey?
Yes, I believe we're following a practical and reasonable protocol on this ideal. We're not earmarking it for any given vendor, and we don't even know if the project is going to proceed. But without the funding to advocate the project to proceed, then we are backwards. So let us not devalue the efforts of the effect of the protocol. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Copey. Any other comments, questions before we have the clerk call the roll? Thank you. Clerk, call the roll. Yes. Yes.
Barrero? Yes. Davis? No. Vaz? Yes. Hanson? No. Hernandez? No. Moshe? No. Iqbal? No. Kane? No. Caius? Yes. Kofi? No. Leonard? No. Lewis? Martin? No. Molina? No. Sanchez? No. Shefflow? No. Silva? Surges? No. Thomas? No. Weber? No. Wegman? Yes. And Whitney? No. Fails.
Okay, the amendment fails. We have a motion second on the resolution itself. Any further discussion? If not, clerk, call the roll. This is to authorize Grand Victoria Riverboat funding for internal projects for fiscal year 2020, number 19 through 23.
Barrero? Yes. Davis? Yes. Vaz? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Moshe? Yes. Iqbal? Yes. Kane? Yes. Caius? Yes. Kofi? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Shefflow? Yes. Silva? Yes. Surges? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. And Whitney? Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda are appointments. First, may I have a motion and a second to reappoint, this is for Mill Creek Water Reclamation District, reappointment of Mark Hammond, and his term will expire, if approved, June of 2022. So moved by Mr. Fraz, second by Mr. Weber. Any discussion? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Moshe? Yes. Iqbal?
so the motion passes. Next on the agenda are 5 appointments to drainage sanitary districts. I'd like to ask for a motion and a second for all 5 together. This is Big Rock Drainage District Number 2, Brad Scott, whose term would expire if approved September 2022. Plato Rutland Drainage District, Roscoe Stelford. The term expires the same time. Actually, all of these expire on September 2022. Rob Roy Drainage District would be Mike Fagel. Sugar Grove Drainage District Number 1, Tom Conan. And Grand Prairie Sanitary District, Eileen Seyfarth. That's it. That's all 5. So moved by Mr. Leonard, second by Mr. Fraz. Any discussion? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Gillen? Yes. Evans? Yes. Fraz? Yes. Hanson? Yes. Hernandez? Yes. Boucher? Yes. Bell? Yes. Hannigan? Yes. Kobe? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin? Yes. Molina? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Devil? Yes. Silva? Yes. Sturgis? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Whitty? Yes. Mr. Wood? Aye. That is it. Okay. Thank you. That passes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, before I go to executive session, I just ask for your indulgence very quickly. And it's the reason why I bring that up today is because it's time critical. If there's anyone who would like to participate in getting petitions filled out for a candidate who's running for IMRF board, the petitions will be due, actually they're due Monday, but we're going to gather on Friday, have an information packet for anyone who's interested in participating. We have some of the larger agencies, which I like to express my appreciation for their support of this effort, and I have 24 packages for board members that explains it. It's not on the agenda, so I won't go into it further, but I did want to make the announcement before we go into executive session. So may I have a motion and a second to go into executive session? So moved by Dr. Iqbal, second by Mr. Sanchez. And this is to discuss settlement of claims, potential litigation, and release of closed session minutes. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it.